It's no secret that Kate and I have a bit of a soft spot for Volvos.
Yeah, I used to own a Volvo 340 DL, Variamatic.
And I used to own a tank. I mean, a Volvo 240, which was built like a tank, both from the 1980s, 1990s. And when our cars were still relatively new, there was a performance arm associated with Volvo called
Polestar.
And Polestar was basically the rallying, high performance, high octane version of Volvo's motorsports division. Officially it wasn't, but to all intents and purposes it was. And I have many, many fond memories of watching rear-wheel drive Volvo estates blatting through rally stages in weather much like this.
Which is appropriate since what we have today is a Volvo.
A Polestar, Kate.
Oh, sorry, a Polestar.
When Polestar started making the Polestar 2 a couple of years ago, it offered a single motor front-wheel drive variant. But this is very different. This is the Polestar 2, the single motor long range. Kate, I have a question for you.
Yeah?
Did you order the snow?
Well, yes, actually. I have that kind of power.
Seriously though, I mean this is very Swedish.
It is, and it's pretty much ideal for testing a rear-wheel drive car.
Wearing Michelin primacy tyres.
Yeah, maybe this wasn't the best decision we've ever made.
Well, I mean, look, I think a lot of people think that we have a choice of when we review cars.
Yeah, no, you get offered 1 week, you might get offered an option of 2. This one we got offered these dates, that's your lot.
Well,
take it or leave it.
That's your lot, because by the time this video is going out, you've had to go to hospital, so that has impacted our filming.
Yeah.
And both this car and the car we've got after it are only available these 2 weeks. And we actually reached out to the company that provided us with these cars and was like, hey, it's going to be snowing pretty hard. Maybe we could get a different week to film. And they were like, yeah, if you don't want the cars, that's fine, but you may not get them again, kind of thing. So,
yeah.
But let's talk about the car, because that's why you're watching this video. It's really interesting. When Polestar came out with the Polestar 2, originally you had a choice of single motor or all-wheel drive, but instead of it being a single motor rear-wheel drive, it was a single motor front-wheel drive.
Which was an unusual decision for a company spun off from Volvo. And I'm not saying that the original front-wheel drive Polestar 2 is a bad car, because it isn't. It's a good car. But I am saying that the rear-wheel drive gives you a different experience.
It was a weird choice to cross-shop against the Tesla Model 3. And let's be clear, this car has always been intended to cross-shop against the Tesla Model 3. And in front-wheel drive form, I really didn't feel like it did that. In rear-wheel drive, though, I think it does.
I think part of that, though, is the marked increase in power between the front-wheel drive original version, which was 167 kilowatts and put out 228 horses, whereas the new one, that's 219 kilowatts, 299 horsepower.
Right, and if you think about it, that 160-ish kilowatts, it's barely more than the Chevrolet Bolt or the Kia e-Niro have.
No, I mean, it's effectively that same ballpark.
And they are much smaller vehicles.
They're smaller, they're also not in this segment. They're not in a segment where you're expecting the kind of performance that this vehicle is delivering or expected to deliver.
It's absolutely terrible weather today, so I'm not going to do like a sprint demonstration. But the 0 to 60 time of this, a little bit improved on the front wheel drive because of that extra power and that extra torque. completely different battery pack as well.
Yeah, they've knocked nearly a second off the 0 to 60.
And the battery pack has gone from, I think it was 70 something.
75 to 82 gross, which is 79-ish.
And you do get a little bit of extra range. You got that 320 miles as opposed to the previous one, which was like 270-ish.
Yeah.
I really do think, though, that this feels like the car should have felt from the get-go. And a lot of people talk about mid-cycle refreshes and say, oh, mid-cycle refreshes are generally not a big deal. It's just styling. That's not the case here.
Yeah, I mean, the mid-cycle refresh here is a bit more extensive. It's not one where they've just tweaked and tucked something. They've put a different motor in a different place in the vehicle, which really changes the dynamics of the driving experience.
And it feels a little bit more predictable. It's definitely got that rear-wheel drive characteristic. I don't necessarily feel it performs badly. Like there's no dramatic difference in the way it corners. It still feels like a Polestar 2. When you ask it for beans, it actually pushes you along. It doesn't scrabble as much as the front-wheel drive did. But there have been some other important tweaks as well. Obviously, there's some styling tweaks around the front end. The thing that hit me today, we've had some heavy snow, and the front centre is heated.
Yeah.
Which is unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I know maybe this is something that is more common in the higher segment vehicles, but certainly a lot of the sort of mid-segment vehicles, those sensors get blocked by snow because they're not heated, and then you lose functions like your adaptive cruise control or your lane sensing. Although I will say this vehicle's lane sensing has disappeared, but we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, I mean, right now, in terms of specs, everything else is pretty much the same. You have that same cargo capacity as you had in the previous version. You've still got a usable front trunk.
Handy for storing the charging cable.
Handy for storing charging cables. Just as a note, though, if you are watching this and you are in North America, your frunk is smaller than it is in Europe.
Yes, not everything is bigger in America, and that front trunk, there are legal reasons it's smaller.
So, I mean, you can put a decent amount of stuff in the front. At the moment, we've got the charging cable in there, and it is a very chunky, properly designed charging cable, which is lovely because a lot of car companies don't put in a decent sized charging cable. That is a proper unit, and I would have no problems charging with that all the way up to 32 amps. And on the center console here, you can change the current, which I think is lovely. The thing, though, that really strikes me about this is how smooth it is and how quiet the interior is. Right now, it's louder because it's raining and it's wet, and we've got not necessarily the quietest tyres. But when I was driving it up to yours the other day, it was very refined.
Yeah, it has a really well-balanced ride experience.
It's also very easy to break the speed limit.
Yes. Yeah, when I was taking it through some twisties on the way to you, I did look down and I did realise I had perhaps exceeded the speed that I was expecting to be travelling at. Because, again, well-balanced drive, good handling, it's quite easy to use that performance. So you do need to be a little bit careful.
And there's a customizable menu here that you can use to change the steering feel. You can have light, which is great for around town. I like the firm. It gives you a more engaging drive. And let's talk about the one pedal and the ability to turn it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing I miss a little bit is paddles, because I like having paddles.
Me too.
But it does have a very good one-pedal drive. It does bring the car to a complete stop, and it does it in a way which is reassuringly consistent. And for those who do not like the one-pedal drive experience, it does have a low setting, which is more like you would get with a gas car, and off, which is more like you would get, I suppose, with an automatic.
It's also really easy to change the one-pedal drive function. And for Radiohead fans?
Yeah, there's a button for weirdos who, well, I don't know what the hell they'd be doing in this car, but you can turn on the creep function.
Yeah. The assistance window is also very clear, and I think one of the things that I'm really happy about Polestar with is the fact that all of this is easy to see at a glance. Yes, I can look down and change things on the fly while I'm driving, not necessarily that you should, but it is available there for you should you require it. As opposed to a lot of cars where it's hidden like 5 or 6 layers deep in the menu system, not so here.
I think that's true. I think one of the things that makes that possible is that Android Automotive is still fairly early in its development. And I say that because a lot of these other systems have been around a bit longer and they have got more and more complicated. This has a quite limited set of functions that it performs. It mostly performs them well. We'll talk about some of the issues with them later, but because of that, it can have 1 or 2 touches to pretty much everything, which is good, don't get me wrong. I don't like things where you have to go through lots of menus. I'm old school and I do like buttons, but this is a reasonable compromise.
I mean, you've got these buttons on the steering wheel are very easy to use. It's very clear when you've pressed them, and it's a proper chunky set of Volvo indicators and windscreen wiper thingies.
Polestar.
Volvo. I know we've been joking that it's a Volvo, and it uses Volvo parts, and that's because Volvo and Polestar and Zeekr and a whole bunch of other companies all have the same parent company. So this is built on Volvo's CMA platform, Compact Modular Architecture platform, that is very old. It's been around now for many, many years, and it is a platform that shares a lot of different models. Some are ICE, some are hybrid, some are electric.
Yeah, and you can definitely feel that in the structure of the vehicle, like the way the floor rises up in the middle here. You have a hump, and then you have this massive center console, and I get that in this segment, having a center console, it's perfectly acceptable, but it has basically no storage in it.
No, but as I was saying, with the iterative design process, the fact that this vehicle is only a couple of years old and it's already had a major refresh says a lot about Polestar's ambitions and about how far ahead Polestar is in a lot of ways to traditional legacy automakers, and I think that's why Volvo allowed Polestar to spin off and become a quasi-startup. It's not a real startup because it's benefiting from all of the things that an established legacy automaker would have.
Yeah, I mean, it has access to the Geely parts bin. It has the ability to pull those parts out and use them as they need to, but it also has expertise from those people in manufacturing, and that's something that a lot of startups don't get. They get trapped with little simple mistakes that make parts that break soon, or that don't last as long as they should, or don't fit quite as well as they should because they don't have that expertise available.
All of the safety stuff is straight out of Volvo. The Bliss, the blind spot lane protection stuff, straight out of Volvo. The collision avoidance, straight out of Volvo. The lane keeping and the driver support, straight out of Volvo, but you don't like it.
I think that Volvo is not as big an automaker as a lot of others. It's actually quite small. And I think that's beginning to tell with the fact that pilot assist and the blind spot detection and the more importantly, the lane keep assist is just not really that great. The lane keep assist, I actually had several long runs where because of the light, because of the rain, because of the snow, it wasn't available at all. It wasn't noticing when I crossed the line when I was testing it. And similarly, the pilot assist, I had a long stretch, several actually, on the way down when it wasn't available at all. And when it was available, it was ping-ponging between the lanes, and it was just not that good. I mean, it's not terrible. It's better than not having it at all. But really, it's showing its lack of development.
Interestingly though, when I used this in nice weather, we did have like one day where it was pretty nice. I found it to be quite good when the weather was good. It just can't handle worse weather, and it makes me wonder if that's one of the reasons they included that heated front sensor array to try and improve that performance in poor weather. Talking about software, we cannot drive this car and review this car without talking about the Android Automotive and all of the apps that come with it. It's very clearly arranged. Android Automotive is gaining traction in the automotive space, and unlike some cars that don't seem to be doing Android Automotive very well, this system seems pretty good. I haven't had too many glitches. There's some interesting apps. So you've got a performance gauge that's your traditional kind of G-force representation on screen to show you which way the car is moving at any one time. You've got the Google Maps functionality. You also have a journey log, which I think could be quite useful for people who drive as part of their job, to record where they went and what they did. Now, whether you want a car made by a Chinese automaker to know where you've gone and whatnot is a different question, and I know some people would have privacy concerns about that, but if you don't sign in, then it doesn't share that information attached to your name. You also have a YouTube app, so when you're parked up, you can watch YouTube in the car while you charge, which is nice. But then you've also got your Google Assistant, you've got your Range Assistant, which tells you, what your actual consumption is like. And apparently our climate control is causing us to have high energy consumption.
Yes, it's been saying that all day.
That's the snow and the rain. But you also obviously have this air quality meter, which I quite like. It tells you what your current air quality is, and it asks whether you want permission to do this. Unavailable for your safety. This is interesting. It tells us right now what the air quality is and what the pollution is where we are at this given time. Which brings me very nicely to the fact that, unlike a lot of automakers, and I'm going to show you this, Polestar actually includes on its spec sheet the carbon life cycle analysis for this vehicle, which is very cool. It's what they call the carbon footprint Cradle to Gate, which is an interesting term. 22.4 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent from cradle to gate. And if you go with the long range single motor, which is what this is, it has, of all of the Polestar variants right now, it has the lowest carbon footprint, although I suspect the standard range single motor will have an even lower carbon footprint. That one is currently pending, according to Polestar. I think more automakers should be doing this.
Yeah, I think that it's really important, particularly for the electric vehicle segment, but I think actually it should be the case for every vehicle segment, that manufacturers are more transparent about how much carbon those vehicles take to produce and also use through their life.
The whole process of this car, from start to finish, is we want you to have a luxury experience without compromise, which is something that Volvo is very keen on. And I know we keep talking about Polestar, Volvo interchangeably, but when you've spent some time behind the wheel of this car, it's very clearly got so many Volvo-inspired bits that it's difficult to kind of separate them, even though they are technically separate companies. You can think of Polestar as Volvo's luxury arm. Even down to things like the parking ticket holder that's down by the driver's binnacle there, that allows you to put your parking ticket in to show that you've paid
without sticking it to your screen.
Because in Sweden and other Nordic countries, if you did that, you'd have a sticky mess. I feel that this car has that kind of thoughtfulness throughout, and it doesn't have much of the Silicon Valley vibe.
I think I have to agree. I think there are some minor things where, for its segment, I'm surprised it doesn't have them.
Go on.
Like Automatic windscreen wipers. Does not have them.
No, it doesn't have a rear wash wiper either.
It does not. The sun visors do not slide. So there is a chunk of light that can come through here because you cannot slide them across. It's just little things that I found a little bit odd for the market segment and the price.
It's almost as if someone at Polestar's gone, okay, we've got this goal of reducing the price, and we'll come to price in a second, and we need to cut things out. What can we cut out?
Yeah.
Which is something that we've seen other automakers do for years. I mean, Chevrolet did it with the early Chevrolet Bolt EVs. There are certain features that are not on the oldest Chevrolet Bolt EVs, which were later added after people went, oh yeah, that makes sense. Why would we not want this on our vehicle? And those little things that you've mentioned there, and things like not having an ability to completely close this off. My wife got in this car when it was sunny, and she was like, ooh, where's the shade? Like, there is no shade.
There is no shade.
And it's not electrochromic like the Porsche Taycan. It's what you get. That said, this is not as tech-centric as, say, a Tesla Model 3, which is the car that this cross-shops against. This is not a gadget lover's car, but rather a car for someone who appreciates technology in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and I think it's a car that, for someone who is used to driving an older luxury vehicle, maybe 5-10 years old, can step into, move to an electric drivetrain and feel very comfortable and not feel like this is in your face, you have to learn a lot of new things. You get in it, it's got a gear shift, it's got indicators, you can drive it.
Before we finish and go and find something a little bit prettier than this horrible rain, I do want to touch base on charging. This has now got up to 200 kilowatts basically of fast charging. Big improvement on the original, which was 155.
Yeah, I think to keep the vehicle competitive in its market segment, you couldn't really be selling it now with 155 kilowatt rapid charging. That 220 makes it definitely much more of a cross-shopping choice.
And the price now, as I know a lot of people are like, well, how does it cross-shop against the Tesla Model 3? And the Tesla Model 3 can charge a little bit quicker, and this does cost a little bit more. It starts at $51,300 in the US versus the Tesla Model 3, which is $47,740 at the moment, and it changes a lot. Tesla changes the price a lot. You get a faster charging car, you get a longer range on paper with a Model 3. You also get slightly more luggage capability, you get a faster acceleration or a quicker acceleration, excuse me, and you also get, I think, a slightly higher top speed. But it should be noted that when it comes down to it, if you want a performance-oriented car, you're not going to go for this. You'd go for the dual motor.
Yeah.
Or you would go for your Taycan, which is, got just as much space, more space, I think, in the Taycan. Or you would go for the Mustang Mach-E GT or something like that. For a family sedan hatchback, right? It's a hatchback and a sedan. I think this is pretty good. But let's charge up and then let's go and see if we can find some snow. So, Kate, lovely weather we're having up here.
It is the most Nordic weather we could find.
For those who don't know, we are at a higher elevation up here, and this is higher than the elevation where we filmed the video. And we thought we'd come up here because it'd be nice and quiet. Shortly after we left, it started snowing and it got heavier and heavier. Being a higher elevation, it is now snowing really well. But look, it got us to check out the tyres and the rear-wheel drivetrain of this vehicle. Not a good mix in the snow.
Not ideal, but then no rear-wheel drivetrain is really well suited to the snow.
The cabin, I think, is the weakest part of the car.
Yeah, well, I think the cabin belies the CMA's architecture's age, which is kind of visible in the huge hump and the big centre console, which I'm not averse to a big centre console. They can be handy, but this isn't handy because it's all battery. There's no storage in there, really.
That said, and I should add before I move on to what I was going to say, which is to talk about this front trunk. The rear seat area really is, the snow is really speeding up here, it's horrible. The rear seat of this car is really a 2+2 setup. That rear hump makes the middle seat not very comfortable at all. There's not a lot of rear seat legroom if you've got two normal sized adults in the front. And if you've got someone who's particularly tall, there's basically no rear seat legroom at all.
Yeah, and that again is, I think, part of the struggle with an architecture that's designed to take multiple drivetrains and isn't the newest.
That said, we are often told by automakers, oh, we can't put a front trunk in because this is a shared platform.
It has a front trunk, pretty good size.
Pretty good size. It's like 1.3 cubic feet in North America. It's larger elsewhere because of different requirements for safety over here, airbags and things. And the snow is now coming directly on me. The things we do for this channel. So I like the fact that you can put the charging gear up front, and the charger they give you is really beefy. It's a proper sized cable. It's nice and thick. It's got chonk and weight and heft.
So I think one of the things that you really have seen an improvement with is that center console, that advancement of Android Automotive. It has been tweaked and polished, and it is better than it was with the previous iteration of this vehicle. It's had some updates.
Can't do Android Auto. You can't plug your Android phone into it and then mirror the screen.
No, Android Automotive explicitly denies that function because they want you to use Android Automotive, which wouldn't be such an issue, except that every app that I use to listen to music is not available as an Android Automotive app.
So I've been using the CarPlay and it's been fine.
Yeah.
It's not wireless, you have to plug in. But you found a hack. Tell everyone about the hack, real quick.
So real quick, I have a little dongle that I sometimes use in the Nero, which gives me wireless Android Auto because my Nero is too old to have wireless Android Auto. And I plugged it in this car, and it does. I mean, it doesn't work terribly well because it doesn't do the screen ratio correctly, but it does give me those functions back that I was missing and found quite irritating driving it.
That's good at least, but you haven't been able to drive with it. So who is this car for, Kate?
I think it's for someone with a young family, someone who wants the functionality that you might get from a Tesla Model 3, but for whatever reason does not want a Tesla Model 3.
And there are plenty of reasons why people wouldn't want a Tesla. They have an objection to Elon Musk, they don't like the design, they want something more car-like inside. They want more buttons, basically, and this gives that.
I mean, it doesn't have a lot of actual buttons, but the screen buttons do work well. But what it does give you is a very car experience. Like, getting into this, despite the big touchscreen, doesn't feel like getting into a spaceship. It doesn't feel like getting into a weird modern car. It feels like getting into something, you know, early 2000s-y. If you've got that experience, you can get into this and drive it.
Yes. And you say, yes, there's not many in the way of hardware buttons, but you've got a proper indicator stalk, you've got proper light controls, you've got proper windscreen wiper controls, you've got a gear selector. And that, I think, is all very important to a lot of people. The challenge, though, is Polestar is not doing well financially right now. And I have some queries about what long-term support looks like for the brand. But hey, 82 kilowatt hour gross battery pack, 79 kilowatt hour usable, 320 miles of achievable range in the real world. And it's a CATL battery. And they know batteries. What's not to love? Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are more than some of the 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon, YouTube, and Ko-fi, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just over $10 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Ken F22, Tom Stovall, Sean Harper, Jeffrey Anderson, Welly Yee, James Fearnley, Rebecca Fussell, SRS 5694, Jack Rupel, BMW K1, Larry Ronning, Sean K, MD, Did Great, Mike Kainka, Mario Murillo, Dave Nelson, Abraham Palmer, Ed Bieler, and Peter Nelson. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your week of fame. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have a good old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is linked below. Also, if you're in need of some swag, you'll find out our swag store in the down below. This month, we are celebrating wrangling EV FUD with an awesome new design by our in-house artist and animator, Erin. Get yours today by heading to our Redbubble store. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we also think that this one is well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving!